This is the Powered Up Podcast, show number 1.
Welcome to a real-world education with insight and advice from teachers in the game, where current and former educators reveal what truly sets apart the great teachers and what it takes to make a positive impact on students. Whether you're in pre-service learning, new to the game, or a seasoned veteran, this is the show for you. You'll leave feeling inspired to take action because we are powering education by empowering you.
Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Ken Ehrmann, host of the Powered Up Podcast, and I am here with my co-host, Matt Rogers. Matt, why don't you say hi to everybody, and I want you to give one adjective as to how you are feeling about officially launching this podcast.
Hey, guys, it's Matt Rogers. I am so excited to be here. I guess excited is the obvious one, but relieved that it is finally here. I know Ken and I have put in a lot of work to get to this point, to get some quality conversations, people lined up to talk education, and realistically, just to talk about the things we're passionate about. So the fact it's finally here, it's about to be live, all that effort finally seems worth it. All these late evenings with Ken getting prepped, but we're here, baby. Let's get rolling.
Yeah. So Matt, I have to be honest. I set you up a little bit with that question. The goal of this launch podcast is to try to introduce to our viewers and our listeners what this show will be about. And I asked you for one adjective because I wanted our listeners to quickly learn that when I ask for a sentence or a word or a quick thought, it's never one of what I'm asking, or it's never short. You always like to dive in a little bit deeper, which is why I love talking to you. So I'm sorry, I kind of set you up there, and I honestly didn't tell you about that. But now everybody knows, and that's the goal for tonight, is to introduce the show. So we did it organically.
Well, I will say you are the straight shooter. You're very direct. I am the roundabout. That's how I've been all my life. But I think what's best about it is we both are super passionate about what we do. And honestly, probably even more passionate about things we don't do anymore. Whether it's helping others with problems we've kind of survived through is probably the best way to put it. But it gets me so excited. Because let's be honest, education is tough. I mean, there is no denying that one. But to make that journey a little bit easier for someone along the way, that's what gets us excited, even if it's in a long-winded, very wordy version from me, or 3 words, and you're having me do what your kids do all the work for you.
Exactly. That's the goal. So as I said, we're launching this podcast. We're really excited about it. And the goal of this episode is to kind of introduce what we hope this show will be about. But the reality is we really don't know yet. We're kind of like first year teachers here. We have ideas, we have hopes, we have dreams of what this show will become. But to be able to predict exactly what it's going to be is not really realistic for us at this point. So Matt, why don't we just start with getting to know you, getting our audience to know Mr. Rogers a little bit more. So why don't you start with, what your teaching career started as and what that journey has looked like?
Yeah, so I guess before I can even get into the teaching journey, we all have a reason why we got into education. And I definitely was not a kid that led towards being a teacher or thought about that at any point before having to set a major for college. I had, we'll say, plenty of learning difficulties along the way, but through some helicopter momming, which I'm sure my mother would not be thrilled with me claiming, but also a lot of perseverance, I got to the point where school was successful enough, and I realized the way to get through is to help other kids like myself get through education. And so I ended up I went to Millersville University many moons ago at this point, and came out of Millersville and teach at Pequea Valley School District, a very tiny school district in, we'll say, eastern central PA, right along the border of the Chester County, Lancaster County area, and taught special ed for 5 years, which was kind of my bread and butter, and then realized that I could help kids like myself even more in a regular ed environment because I was teaching them for more content. So I have been teaching fourth grade this is year 8, I believe, which is crazy to say. And my wife is also a fourth grade teacher with me as well at the same school district. So it is a family affair in the Rogers household related to fourth grade, Pequea Valley. She was a learning support teacher too. And so that's definitely my passion, right? Helping kids see their own potential, especially the ones that struggle to see it or it doesn't come so naturally.
I actually have a quick question, Matt. I've known you for a long time. Did you and your wife meet in Pequea, in the district?
So, so we met through new teacher induction, where you go through. Every teacher has those.
The Pequea induction must look a lot different than the one I'm used to.
I met her originally through there, and then from that point we worked together. She was a sixth grade learning support teacher, and I was the fourth and fifth grade. And in some preparation to send my kids to middle school, we decided to set up some in-person conferences.
Very nice.
I'll leave it there. Well, I think it's only appropriate, right? So going on about myself, you'll give me probably 3 sentences, but let's get into you. Why are you here? Why are you telling me as an authority, as an expert? That might be high words, but why are you here? And how did you get to this point, especially with education? I know you have your own unique path.
Yeah. So, as a kid, I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. For a while, I thought gym teacher, which converted into elementary classroom teacher. Went to Shippensburg University, certified for elementary ed. I'm also certified for middle school math, and found myself in my first year subbing day to day, which I think is an experience that is extremely beneficial for teachers to go through, especially those aspiring to be full-time teachers. I really enjoyed going in the classrooms, and you could tell within minutes how well that classroom was managed. And when a classroom I could tell was very well managed, I tried to figure out how and why. What did the teacher do? Was there signage? Was there systems? It was a really valuable learning experience for me. During that first year, I had the opportunity to teach second grade for 4 months, filling in for a teacher out on maternity leave. I started right after the holiday break, and that experience was just incredible. I absolutely loved second grade, and I kind of regret that I haven't ever been able to make it back to that age. Just the growth that you could see with the kids was really, really beneficial, and I really grew a lot in that time. It allowed me to test the things that I was observing and seeing as a sub. And then the following year, I landed in Penridge School District, where I still am today. I taught fifth grade for 7 years. I started out specializing just as the grade level math teacher. And then towards the end of my time at Seiler Elementary, I was teaching all the subjects, which was a good transformation for me. I spent 1 year in a different elementary school, West Rock Hill, piloting a STEM special, adding it to the rotation with the likes of gym, art, music, and library. And I love that position, but I had the opportunity to move into my current role as a secondary instructional coach. And so teaching secondary or working in secondary was always on my list of things I wanted to accomplish in relation to education. And although I'm not in a classroom, I get to be in a lot of classrooms and work with teachers, not only in the middle schools, but the high school as well. And working with teachers in subjects I would never have an opportunity to teach because I don't have those certifications. So far, it's been a really rewarding experience. I think I've been able to offer a lot to the secondary community in my district, as well as learn a lot from those great teachers. And, for me, it's everything I've done has always been, how do I make the student experience better? And, that definition of better is going to change over time, but how do I make it more engaging, more fun, more challenging, all of those elements? And, regardless of the position I move into, I've tried to hold that true to myself. And, that's kind of what I hope is just one layer that our listeners and our viewers get out of this podcast is talking to those amazing teachers and finding that out. And when we talk amongst the two of us, or when we have a guest on our show, we're really hoping to just create authentic conversation. The main goal is to try to interview as many teachers as possible, talk about their craft, their passions, and extract that advice that we can provide to others. Because, Matt and I have our own experience, but there's thousands of experiences out there from other educators. And we want to dive deep into that and find out what they did, what they do, and how that really makes the experience better for students. If I had to identify two key words for this podcast as of now, the hope would be that it's authentic and that it can provide action. And we want our viewers to hear these conversations and ideas and say, oh, you know what? I want to try that tomorrow. Or that's a great strategy for conference time. I'm going to remember that when those conferences roll around. And these teachers that we're going to work with are in the trenches every day in and day out, the grind. And we want to honor that and applaud that and find out what they do that can really help their students have a better experience. And the main thing is building bridges. Teaching, you so often feel as though you're on an island. That island could be just you. Maybe it's just you and your grade level partner who you collaborate really well with. But I mean, there are thousands of educators and thousands of schools across our country and across the world. And we really want to find a way to build those bridges and connections and those networks so that you don't have to feel as though you're on an island. So kind of on that topic, that's really how Matt and I met. So Matt, why don't you tell our audience just, briefly, how did we meet and what were those experiences like in the way that we met?
Yeah, so I think Ken and I are two very normal classroom teachers in all reality. And I think we have had the opportunity through the years of some extraordinary or special experiences throughout the years. And I'll kind of touch on those in a moment. But I think that's to kind of tap into what you were saying about authentic and action. I think the other thing is I'm hoping that we come off as relatable and almost kind of at the same eye to eye with you as peers. We have had some pretty phenomenal opportunities through the years that we, to be honest, I feel like with the combination of being in the right spot and working hard kind of grew this friendship and obviously what is now this podcast. But to put our original meet, our first date was a program called Keystone Technology Innovators. And it's a collection of 100 selected educators across the state of Pennsylvania that are recognized for their integrations of technology in their classroom. And from that point, they go to a kind of central location and just kind of share some great wisdom. And what was really unique about our situation is I feel like KTI is a huge part, but we made much further lasting connections than just being alumni of KTI. It's a phenomenal program that we really are fond of. But we recognized that there was a few of us that had some great ideas and just wanted to continue that experience. And with the help of a few friends of ours, which I'm sure will be on the podcast at some point, kind of created this program called STEM Camp EDU, which blew up way more than we ever expected, I think. It turned out into hundreds of educators coming from all across the country to see the 7 or 8 of us present what we did our classroom. And I think the really neat thing about it, we'll talk about this more, I'm sure, Ken, I'll have you chime in a little bit, but I think the really cool thing about STEM Camp is it's not about us. Much like this podcast, it's really about the conversations and the journey. And you tell me where we are or where you are. And as a group, how can we take a few further steps? Because we don't need to dive completely in. It was pretty funny. We started this before anyone really knew what STEM was. And through the years, it is the buzz term that everyone and anyone, whether it's toy companies or curriculum or even government political kind of movements are referencing the importance of STEM. And the truth behind it is important, but we like to kind of act like we were on top of it a little bit before everyone else. So I'll let you kind of chime in a little bit more about that.
Yeah, you highlighted those events and those networks that we're a part of, and those are really valuable to us because, like you said, the event that we helped start with our team at STEM Camp. It was never about us; it was about the people there and learning from each other and pulling on those experiences. And that's what we really want this podcast to be about: is to empower ourselves, empower our listeners and viewers, and really empower the guests that we have on these shows, because there are so many teachers that do so many special things that are very unique. And at the same time, I feel as though teachers feel it's very, for lack of a better term, normal, because it's just what they do. They just do this day in and day out. But I don't think they always stop to recognize or think about how much of an impact it can have on their students. And those are the things that we want to draw out of our conversations and give other teachers ideas to feel empowered to do it themselves, or to hear and say, hey, I do that too. And for them to realize that it is important what they're doing. And we really just want everyone to be proud of what they hear and proud of what they're doing. And really to grow that network together. And so along with this podcast, we are launching a website found at powereduup.com. And there you can become a free member and engage in forums, share ideas, share resources, ask questions. And that'll be something that we talk about a little bit more. But it's one more place where we want people to feel empowered and connected and to build those bridges, because it's so hard to find people to collaborate with and to really establish a PLN, which is a big topic thrown around education right now. Grow your PLN and establish your PLN. And social media is usually part of that conversation. And although I'm an avid user of social media, or Twitter at least, it's tough. It's tough to do that. So, Matt, how have you specifically grown your PLN in the past? What have you found to be a little bit frustrating or difficult with it? And how do you hope this website might help? As I brought this idea to you about the forums.
Yeah, so I think so. PLN, Personal Learning Network. In theory, what it's supposed to be is, as you gain connections, I'll use the version in the business model of LinkedIn, where you identify people you have connections in that could essentially vouch for you and your work ethic and work quality. A PLN ends up being this we'll say support group Usually, a lot of people use Twitter as the main one, especially for conferences, but it's happening on Instagram. Heck, at this point, it's happening on TikTok. That may be a banned word on this podcast or some education, but the whole concept is, hey, I'm having trouble with this situation, or I have this creative idea. How can someone support me? And for instance, I'm having this tech issue. Can anyone share wisdom on how they solved it with their kids? Or I'd like to bring in this subject matter expert. Does anyone have any connections? And the hard part about PLNs, to be honest, is PLN and social media right now is very surface heavy, but very it loses all of its density when it comes to depth. And what I mean by that is everyone's looking to get followers, everyone's looking to get retweets and tweets, and you'll see it after they have one good tweet that blew up. The rest of the content is not usually as profound, and that's normal. We don't all think as philosophers, but the real idea is you want to engage in conversations. But unfortunately, PLNs these days really are the flashy things that you saw on Teacher Pay Teacher, or these one or two things that you get marketed as. What's beautiful about I've had my Twitter account now for, I think, 9 years and have like 3,000 followers. To be honest, I probably know about a quarter to a half of them, and much fewer that if I put anything out there would I expect to actually hear back. And I think that's where the beauty of hopefully this website comes in. It's not meant to be a passive activity. Hey, I can scroll and waste time and maybe come across 3 or 4 good ideas as I'm going. The whole goal of this forum is just like a regular forum. I have this problem, I have this thought, and everyone can chime in and provide their support, because guess what? I'm a 4th grade teacher. You may be a 4th grade teacher. We have similarities in what our expectations are, and work smarter, not harder. But the other thing is, and this is the big key, and this is why PLNs are important, and hopefully this forum grows, is I have other coworkers that don't teach like how I teach and hold my classroom. My classroom is wildly different than my coworkers. So that can either be empowering or it can be discouraging. I know I create a lot of hassle for my fellow teachers because I have a pretty, what I would like to classify as dynamic classroom, which makes everyone else raise their game. That's my perspective. They may not have the same positive outlook, but this forum, or what PLNs are supposed to be, is really that connection source where you can bring people with similar ideas and work through those problems to boost everyone up and actually get answers to the problems you have, or create ideas and take your learning so much further. There's nothing like being empowered to put that extra effort in, even if you know you don't have to. It's just at the end for the benefit of kids.
Absolutely. And the last thing I'll hit on with this topic is, there are the Facebook groups and there are the Reddit posts and the different forums for products specifically, and those are great. But I typically find myself, on Twitter, I might see some cool stuff, but searching doesn't really work. So when I have questions, I found that I was constantly just going to Google and hoping to find some sort of forum post on some sort of website, and this site, powereduup.com, is going to be the one place for educators where we talk about tech, we don't talk about tech, we talk about classroom management, we talk about the first day of school, we talk about anything that you want, because you bring the content and you bring the questions. You can share resources, ideas, videos, lessons, anything that you want. So the other goal for this podcast launch episode is to set some goals, which I would very commonly do in my classroom. I would do it in the beginning of the year, typically, definitely at barking period turnovers was a nice time to kind of refocus with my kids. They would write goals. I would go through different goal writing exercises that I had picked up or learned or read about. And I would also use it as a time to make sure that I talked to every one of my students individually. just to guarantee that I was getting that time with them. So Matt, give us a goal. What are you personally hoping to gain from this podcast?
So we're recording this, and not to set a date on when we're starting this podcast, but we are currently still in the COVID era. And I know from my end that I have been working right now to survive. And for right now, that's great for me. I like the idea of being able to survive to see another day and not knowing how long this goes. But the other side of that is, am I going to be proud of what I created as an experience for the kids that I have this year? I know that they have trauma. They have a lot of misunderstanding and confusion, and what they need right now more than anything. And we can take this and put it 4 years from now, and the same thing's going to be true, is they need an opportunity that takes all of their troubles away and lets them focus on A, being a kid, and B, having them fall in love with learning. And so my goal through this podcast is to be a receiver of ideas, to communicate and get feedback on my thoughts, and more than anything, hopefully portray some thoughts that are helpful to others, because I think when you get a lot of really great people in the same room, I won't even include myself, it's the guests that Ken brings in here, but when you get a lot of great thinkers and honestly critical thinkers, Ken and I don't have a lot of we have similar passions, but I'm quite a bit more critical than Ken is. I wouldn't say logical. You're a pretty logical thinker, and I'm a little lofty. But that being said, I think the goal of this podcast is to raise everyone's game. Again, it all comes back to, at the end, we can get monotonous. Our standards don't really change. I can do what I did last year if I really wanted to. But more than ever right now, my kids need the best version of fourth grade, not just the amount of effort I want to put in. So that's my very long answer. Ken, I'll turn it back to you. I think that's a huge thing too, especially in this new position. You don't have as much direct access with kids. So what are you hoping to get out of this experience?
Yeah, I've actually, to be honest, been struggling to succinctly establish my goal, which is the opposite of how I typically communicate. And I've come to realize that I thoroughly enjoy challenges. I realized that as a classroom teacher, why I was always trying new things. I thought that it would be best for students, and that was my number one criteria. But I also loved the challenge of, how do I make this work in a fifth grade class? How do I make this strategy work teaching science? And that's what I'm really enjoying about my new position as well. And I think that, I don't know that it's necessarily a goal, but it's something that I hope to gain from this experience, is this challenge of communicating with educators that I know and communicating on a deeper level, or communicating with educators that I don't know too well, that find themselves on our show, and learning from them, and hopefully providing some insight, not necessarily sharing my ideas, but pulling out what the educators are doing in their classroom that's special, and empowering them to realize that it is special, and then sharing that idea with a larger audience. And so I would say my goal is to learn a lot, and to hopefully share that learning experience with a larger audience, and kind of see where that takes me. And I'm excited about that challenge. So I think we're going to wrap things up here. Again, the goal was to just establish this show before we dive deep into some topics and some interviews. So some things to leave you with. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this podcast wherever you are listening to it. Leave us a rating and review. That would be fantastic. If you haven't already, please go to powereduup.com and become a free member, where you can participate in the forums. You can actually read and peruse the forums without becoming a member, but we would love you to engage in that platform. You can follow us on all social media platforms at powereduup. And if you're watching on YouTube, know that this is a podcast. And if you are listening, know that this is on YouTube as well, however you want to enjoy these episodes. Before we leave, we are called the Powered Up Podcast. And I've actually had a couple of people ask me, Matt, why is it Power EDU Up for your social media and your websites? And it's because we don't want anyone to forget that you, the listener, you, the teachers, are the ones that power up education. And without you in the trenches day in and day out, education would fall stagnant. You are the ones that create change. You are the ones that empower students and make them set on a path for a better life. And we don't ever want anyone to forget that extra little you that's in there. So if you enjoyed this show, please tell a friend to check out the site and check out the show. Matt, go ahead and take us out of here, and I will talk to everyone next time.
All right. So hopefully we left you feeling powered up as we get ready to power down. We'll talk to you guys next time.